I am in love with my enemy. Yeah, I know, sounds ridiculous. We've been arch enemies for as long as I can remember. But now, who cares? I'm in love with him, and I have to make him mine. My darling, why does he always ignore me? I know he doesn't hate me, not like that. I can feel it, he's just playing hard to get, pretending he doesn't want me even though he is in love with me, and for some reason, he keeps acting cold, keeps rejecting me. I wonder why. Well, I'll just have to do some research. My thoughts are disrupted the moment I finally see him. William Everhood. A grin stretches across my face as I take a long sip of my drink, ruffle my hair for that perfect, effortlessly hot look, and without a second thought, I bolt. Darling. The entire cafeteria flinches at my shout, but most of them are already used to this. Some roll their eyes, others snicker. A few unlucky souls who aren't familiar with my antics spill their drinks in shock. And then there's him, William Everhood, my beautiful, cold, untouchable darling. The campus heartthrob, a man straight out of a fantasy, tall, broad, and devastatingly handsome. His jet black hair glistens under the cafeteria lights, sharp eyes cutting through the air like blades. Girls drool over him, guys either admire or hate him, and then there's me, the only one shameless enough to chase after him. His expression shifts the moment he sees me. The usual mask of indifference disappears for a split second, replaced by something almost terrified. I see the exact moment his fight or flight instincts kick in. He shoots up from his seat, ready to bolt, but I'm faster. I reach him in seconds, pushing him back down onto the bench, one leg thrown over it beside him. Darling, how could you start eating without me? I pout, grabbing his chin and tilting his face toward mine. I was waiting for you. And why didn't you reply to my texts last night? Did you fall asleep without saying goodnight? My fingers trace over his sharp jawline, my smirk widening at the way his muscles tense. William glares at me, jaw tight. Easter Wilson, get off me. I tighten my grip on his chin. Why are you ignoring me? I thought we were going on a date today. I even wore your favorite color for you. I tug at my dark blue jacket with a knowing look. I know he loves this color. His eyes flicker to the fabric, and I don't miss the way his ears turn the faintest shade of pink before he quickly looks away. I don't like blue anymore. Now get away. I raise an eyebrow. Oh, you don't like blue anymore? I hum, pretending to believe him. Well, people's tastes change. So tell me, what color do you like now? Without waiting for an answer, I shrug off my jacket, revealing the light gray shirt underneath. His eyes unconsciously trail over my collarbones for a second too long before he snaps his head away, visibly annoyed. I don't have a favorite color. Now, get away. His voice is sharp, but I know him too well. This man, this big, strong, 6'5" muscle tower, could easily shove me off with a flick of his wrist if he really wanted to. But he won't. He never does. Because this idiot is just as in love with me as I am with him. He just doesn't want to admit it. I lean in closer, voice softening. Darling, stop fighting it. Don't ignore me. I really don't like it. His glare sharpens, but I don't back down, staring straight into his stormy eyes. I can see my reflection in them, just like he can see his in mine. Before he can respond, the moment is ruined. A teacher walks in, and I quickly step back, sending a sharp glare at the onlookers. Show's over. Get lost. Disappointed murmurs fill the cafeteria, but people reluctantly turn away. Some still whisper about us, but I ignore them. We are the campus's power duo, whether William likes it or not. When I turn back to him, he's inhaling deeply, trying to steady himself. I smirk, pulling out a small carton of his favorite yogurt from my pocket. Here, I say, poking a straw into it. You need energy to tolerate me for the rest of the day. William shoots me a look but doesn't move. Instead, he suddenly stands up, towering over me, arms crossed. You wanna feed me? He challenges, smirking for the first time today. Go ahead. Ah, fuck, he's too tall. My poor neck hurts. I mean, I'm not short either, I'm literally 5'8". That's not short at all. It's just that he's a giant. I barely reach his chest, but hey, height doesn't matter. Dominance does, and I am the dominant one here. One day, for sure, I'll pin him down and devour him. Hee hee. I am the husband. My thoughts were interrupted when he crossed his arms, tilting his head with that annoyingly smug smirk. Go ahead, what's stopping you? He stood straight, back tall, shoulders broad. Yeah, of course, I couldn't reach him like this. Even on my tiptoes, it was useless. I sigh, glancing around before pulling a bench closer. I step onto it, finally leveling our heights. William's expression falters for a second, surprised at my boldness. I grin, hooking an arm around his neck and pulling him just close enough. My other hand lifts the drink to his lips, my eyes never leaving his. "Drink up, darling," I whisper. A flicker of something crosses his face. He parts his lips, letting the straw between them, his sharp gaze never wavering from mine as he slowly sips. The cafeteria fades. All I can hear is the faint sound of him drinking, the barely there hitch in his breath. All I can see are his lips, the slight bob of his throat as he swallows. And for a brief moment, neither of us moves. Neither of us dares to look away. Without thinking, I wipe his lips with my thumb, though there's nothing there. I just wanted to touch him. I smirk, hopping down from the bench. "Take care, darling. Make sure to reply to my texts this time, okay?" I wink before sauntering off, hips swaying happily. William stays frozen, watching my retreating figure. The second I'm out of sight, he exhales sharply, raising a hand to his face. His fingers brush over his lips, his heartbeat a little too fast, his skin a little too warm. He takes another deep breath, willing his emotions under control. But before he can fully collect himself, someone scoffs beside him. "He's such a pushover. Don't you find him annoying? You could easily." Cold. The temperature seems to drop as William turns his head, his usual sharp but indifferent eyes darkening into something terrifying. "No one asked," he says, voice dangerously low. "So keep your mouth fucking shut, unless you want to lose it." The guy stiffens, swallowing nervously before scampering away. William lets out a slow exhale, glancing down at the discarded blue jacket on the floor. Without thinking, he picks it up, dusting it off. And then, without another word, he walks away. The class was boring as hell. I sipped my orange juice and glanced behind me, only to find my darling completely focused on the lecture. I felt a pang of jealousy. Why the hell did he have to look at the teacher so much when I'm sitting right here? I'm much prettier, much manlier. Without thinking, I grabbed my notebook and wrote, "Darling, you look so handsome." I ripped the paper out, crumpled it into a ball, and sneakily tossed it toward him. He frowned, unfolded it, and immediately recognized it was from me, without even looking at me. He sighed and balled it up in his fist. But he didn't throw it away. I watched him, heart racing. He didn't throw it out the window like I expected. Emboldened, I grabbed another sheet of paper and wrote, "Darling, I'm hungry. Can we eat together? Please, please, please carrot." I tossed it his way. He read it, then crushed it in his fist again, glaring at me. I smiled innocently, loving the effect I had on him. But just as I was about to grab another sheet, the teacher caught me in the act. "Easter Wilson." "Yes, sir," I responded, barely glancing at him. "You need something. Hurry up, I'm in the middle of some important business." The teacher sighed in exasperation. "Come solve this problem. If you can't, I'm calling your dad, no, your brother." I froze. He knew my dad couldn't do anything to me, but my brother. Fuck, I feared my brother more than anything. He was strict and had a temper, but, well, I loved him. Still, I nodded and stood up, walking to the front of the class. I grabbed the marker and solved the problem in a flash. Math was my jam. I could solve it in my sleep. With a smug grin, I walked back to my seat and sat beside William instead. The teacher couldn't say a word, so he just continued with the lesson. I leaned my chin into my palm, staring at my darling. "What are you doing?" William asked, looking at me with a raised eyebrow. "Watching my wife." I scooted closer, my leg brushing against his. My free hand slid down to his thigh, and I felt his body tense. He had goosebumps. "The heck are you doing?" He shifted, trying to move away, but I closed the gap. "Can't I touch my own wife?" I teased, running my fingers over his thigh. He looked at me, deadpan. "This is sexual assault." I smirked. "Oh really? Then you can do it back." "I don't mind." I grabbed his hand, placing it on my thigh, guiding it closer to my inner thigh. His eyes widened in shock. "The fuck?" He quickly yanked his hand away, avoiding my gaze. I couldn't help but giggle as I laid my head back on the bench, staring at him. His neck and ears were bright red. Cute. The cafeteria was packed, but I didn't care. My focus was locked onto one thing, my darling. William sat at our usual table, eating like the responsible, composed student he was. Meanwhile, I had one goal in mind. I plopped down beside him, dramatically sighing as I rested my head on his shoulder. Darling, I'm starving. Feed me. He didn't even blink. You have hands. Use them. I gasped, clutching my chest. You wound me. William ignored me, calmly chewing his food. That wouldn't do. I needed attention. Without hesitation, I stole a fry from his tray and stuffed it in my mouth. He finally turned to me, eyes narrowing. Easter. His voice was dangerously low. I grinned, taking another fry. What was that? You're offering me more. How sweet of you. He exhaled sharply, clearly holding back from strangling me. But I wasn't done yet. I reached for his drink next, wrapping my lips around the straw and taking a long sip while maintaining eye contact. He stiffened. Are you serious? What? We're married. Sharing is caring. I smirked, twirling the straw between my fingers. He pinched the bridge of his nose. We are not married. Yet. William took a deep breath like he was praying for patience. But just as he was about to retort, someone across the cafeteria snickered. Damn, William, you really let him boss you around like that. William's entire demeanor shifted. He slowly turned his head, his once annoyed expression darkening into something far more terrifying. The poor guy immediately shut up, looking anywhere but at us. I blinked. Ah, darling, are you protecting my honor? So romantic. William shot me a glare. Shut up. I giggled, leaning even closer. Make me. His eye twitched. I was so winning this game. After lunch, my darling disappeared. 1 second he was there, rolling his eyes at my antics, and the next, poof, gone. I searched for him, wandering through the school corridors, the library, even peeking into empty classrooms. No sign of him. Why the hell is he hiding from me? Annoyed, I sighed and made my way to the courtyard, hoping I'd find him there. The sun was warm, a light breeze ruffling my hair as I stretched, deciding to give up for now. Then I heard it, a faint rustling, a soft pattering of paws against the pavement. A low, excited bark. I froze. My entire body went rigid. Slowly, very slowly, I turned my head. And there it was. Oh, my fucking God. A puppy. No, not a puppy. A dog. A menacing, terrifying, four-legged demon with fluffy ears and a wagging tail. I did the only logical thing a man in my situation could do. I screamed. Ah, I hate dogs. My cool, mysterious, dominant image. Ruined. Gone. Shattered into a million pieces. I bolted, running at full speed like my life depended on it. Which it did. The dog, probably thinking we were playing a game, chased after me, its tail wagging like it was having the time of its life. Me, I was suffering. With my eyes shut tight, I sprinted blindly, desperate to escape my fluffy nightmare, until my foot caught on something, and thud, face first into the ground. Pain shot through my hand, and I groaned. Shit, that's gonna bruise. I clenched my fist, expecting my inevitable doom as the dog jumped on me. But nothing happened. Confused, I cracked one eye open, only to see him. William, my savior, my guardian angel, my incredibly hot, slightly scary, always grumpy darling. He held the puppy in his arms, effortlessly lifting it like it weighed nothing. He handed it back to its owner, some kid who quickly apologized before running off with their fluffy hellspawn. I remained sprawled on the ground, dignity shattered, cool guy persona in ruins. But did I care? Hell no, I could use this. Dramatically, I groaned, clutching my back. Ow, darling, I'm hurt. I pouted up at him, blinking innocently. William stared down at me, unimpressed. Stop fooling around. He turned to leave, but I gasped and quickly held up my hand, showing off the fresh scrape on my palm. A few droplets of blood welled up, the perfect finishing touch. I'm not. Look, it hurts. You know how much I hate getting injured, don't you? I added my best puppy eyes, full force. For a second, just a second, William's eyes flickered with concern. Gotcha. Before I knew it, he grabbed my collar and yanked me up, effortlessly, might I add, like I was some helpless, rain-soaked kitten. I barely had time to process what was happening before he marched me straight to the nurse's office. I blinked at him, stunned. Maybe my plan worked a little too well. William sat me down and, without a word, began tending to my wound. His touch was unexpectedly gentle, his fingers brushing over my skin with precise care as he cleaned the scrape and applied a bandage. I watched him, heart pounding in my chest for reasons I didn't care to name. When he finished, he pulled back slightly. There, don't get it wet. That was it. That was all he said. But I was too damn happy. I beamed and, without thinking, threw myself at him. The force sent him tumbling back onto the bed, with me on top of him, arms wrapped tightly around his waist. You worry so much about me, yet you act so tough. I nuzzled closer. Darling, you care about me so much. William stiffened, clearly flustered. Easter Wilson, get off of me. I ignored him, hugging him tighter. You're so sweet. I love you so much. Before he could react, I reached up, cradled his face in my hands, and I kissed him. A soft, fleeting peck on the lips. Barely 4 seconds long, but it was enough. When I pulled back, his entire body was frozen. He wasn't blinking. Hell, I wasn't even sure he was breathing. I smirked, running my fingers through his hair. You're adorable. Our faces were close, breaths mingling, heat radiating between us. I could have stayed like that forever. But then the nurse walked in. Quickly, I rolled off him, throwing on my most innocent grin as I sat up, acting like nothing happened. Meanwhile, William remained on the bed, eyes wide, completely speechless. Then, as realization hit, his face exploded into the brightest shade of red I had ever seen. He sat up so fast it was almost inhuman, sputtering. Why, you're annoying. I grinned. Really? No wonder you're blushing so much. He glared at me before abruptly standing and bolting out of the room, leaving me behind, laughing. I stretched my arms, feeling victorious. My first kiss with my darling, accomplished. Well, it was more of a peck, but still. Progress is progress. Humming happily, I strolled out of the nurse's office, my bandaged hand held up like a trophy. The halls were still bustling with students, but my eyes were set on one thing. William. He was fast, but I was faster. I caught up just as he was about to enter class, smoothly sliding in front of him. Darling, why are you running from me? His glare was sharp, but I wasn't fazed. If anything, it was adorable. I'm not running. Move. He tried to step past me, but I placed a hand on the wall beside him, blocking his path. A classic Tibetan. The students passing by immediately started whispering. Some gasped, some giggled. William's brows twitched. Easter. His voice was low, dangerous, but I just grinned. William. I mimicked his tone. Are you shy? Your ears are red again. He scoffed. Move before I leaned closer, just a little. His breath hitched. Before you what? His fists clenched. For a second, I thought he might actually shove me. But instead, he flipped the situation on me. Suddenly, I was the one backed against the wall, and William was in my space. My plan backfired spectacularly. He leaned in, his lips just beside my ear. You really like playing with fire, don't you? Shit, now my ears were burning. Before I could recover, he pulled back, adjusting his uniform like nothing happened. You started this, Easter. Don't complain if I start playing along. Then, with a smirk, a freaking smirk, he walked into the classroom, leaving me standing there, completely flustered. Oh, I was so in trouble. And I loved it. I took a deep breath, trying to regain my composure. Okay, so maybe I poked the bear a little too hard, but damn, was it worth it? A shiver ran down my spine as I replayed his words. You started this, don't complain if I start playing along. I knew William was all broody and tough on the outside, but this was a whole new side of him. A dangerous side, and I wanted more. With a determined grin, I marched into the classroom and took my seat right next to him, plopping down with exaggerated enthusiasm. Miss me, he didn't even glance at me. Not even for a second. Ouch, cold as ever. But that's okay, darling. I like a challenge. I leaned closer, resting my chin on my palm as I stared at his profile. His jaw was clenched, and his ears were still red. Cute. The teacher walked in, but I barely paid attention. William was more entertaining than any lecture. I pulled out a piece of paper and scribbled down. Darling, my lips are feeling lonely. Should we kiss again? With a smug smile, I crumpled the note and tossed it onto his desk. He paused, stared at it for a moment, and sighed before unfolding it. His eyes scanned the words. His hand clenched, and then, in a move I did not expect, he wrote something back. He slid the note over without looking at me. I blinked, surprised. Oh, he's playing along now. I eagerly uncrumpled it and read his reply. Try it and see what happens. Oh, shit. My heart did a somersault in my chest. My fingers tightened around the paper. This was new. This was exciting. I turned my head slowly to look at him. He was staring straight at the teacher, acting like he hadn't just written the most thrilling thread of my life. I licked my lips, leaning in so only he could hear me. William, you're making this really fun. His pen stilled for just a second. Then, finally, he turned to me, his gaze sharp and unreadable. Easter, if you don't shut up, I swear to God. I just smiled, completely unaffected. Swearing isn't nice, darling. But don't worry, I'll make sure to put that mouth of yours to better use later. And that was it. That was the moment he completely lost his composure. His face turned scarlet, his grip on his pen so tight I thought it might snap. I won this round, but I had a feeling the war was far from over. Class was boring, painfully boring. Our teacher had left to chat with another teacher, leaving us with nothing but a ridiculous true or false worksheet worth 25 marks. Like I care about that. All I cared about was my darling. Where was he? I balanced my pencil between my nose and lips, pouting as I scanned the classroom. My eyes landed on William, sitting at his desk, his expression calm and serious as he wrote down his answers. He looked so focused, so determined, so utterly unbothered by my existence. Unacceptable. With a sigh, I dropped my pencil and lazily glanced at the next statement on the worksheet. Easter Wilson's darling absolutely hates him. I blinked. I read it again. What the actual fuck? My head snapped up, looking around. Who the hell wrote this question? I could hear people snickering, some whispering amongst themselves. Oh, that's an easy one. Of course, it's true. William clearly can't stand him. Poor guy, chasing after someone who hates him so much. I scowled. Excuse me. Without hesitation, I stood up and slammed my hand on the desk. False, I declared loudly. The class fell silent. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, some amused, some doubtful. The sound of pencils scratching against paper filled the air as everyone, except for me, confidently marked true on their answer sheets. I turned to William, who, shockingly, was staring at the same question, his brows slightly furrowed. I watched, holding my breath as he lifted his pencil and marked false. Oh, my lips curled into a smirk as I dramatically clutched my chest. My darling, so you admit it, you don't hate me, William sighed, rubbing his temples. Shut up, Easter. But it was too late. I had already dropped my pen, clasped my hands together, and was giving him the most love-struck gaze imaginable. You secretly love me, don't you? The class erupted into laughter. Someone gasped, no way, William marked false. Another student snickered, maybe he's just messing with Easter. But I saw it, the slightest twitch of his fingers. The way he refused to look at me. He wasn't messing around. William didn't hate me. Of course he didn't. The class had barely recovered from the shock of the whole situation when the door suddenly swung open, and our teacher walked back in. He glanced around at the students, who were all whispering and staring at me and William like we had just dropped the biggest scandal of the century. His brows furrowed. Why is everyone acting like something dramatic just happened? Because it did, sir. One brave student immediately pointed at the question on the worksheet. Sir, why is there a question about Easter's love life? The teacher blinked, looked at the paper, and, oh, was that a smirk? Oh, that one, he said casually, flipping through his papers. I added it last minute. The class exploded. What, sir, you can't just make stuff up like that. Someone whined. Another student laughed. Wait, so you knew this would cause chaos? Meanwhile, I was just standing there, hands on my hips, grinning like a lovesick idiot. Sir, you're a shipper, aren't you? I asked, my tone half teasing, half dead serious. The teacher chuckled. Well, let's just say it's been entertaining watching you two. I gasped, my hands flying to my heart. You support me and my darling. You're on my side, he shrugged. I mean, isn't it obvious? You've been chasing William for months, and despite his complaints, he's never actually rejected you. The entire class went feral at that. Oh my God, wait, that's true. William, explain yourself right now. This is the plot twist of the century. William groaned, rubbing his face. Sir, this is completely inappropriate. The teacher ignored him and turned to me instead. Easter, you're officially my new favorite student. I screamed. You have excellent taste, sir. From now on, you are the only teacher I will respect in this school. I declared dramatically, placing a hand over my heart. William sighed so deeply it sounded like his soul was trying to escape his body. I turned to him with the biggest shit-eating grin. Did you hear that, my love? We have support, even authority figures are rooting for us. William just glared at me. The class was still chaotic, half the students debating William's true feelings while the others tried to get the teacher to admit if he was truly a shipper or just messing with us. But me, I was just standing there, soaking in my victory. The last bell rang, and the class emptied fast, but I wasn't leaving. Not until I got my darling's attention. William stood by his desk, packing his things with that cold, unreadable expression, acting as if the entire class hadn't just lost their minds over him choosing false. I leaned against the desk beside him, arms crossed, smirking. "So, wanna explain that little answer of yours, darling?" His movements didn't falter, didn't even hesitate, as he zipped up his bag. "No," I let out a dramatic sigh. William, you wound me." Still nothing. Fine. If he was going to act all ice cold, I was just going to melt him myself. With a quick step, I slid in front of him, blocking his way before he could leave. His eyes finally flicked up to meet mine, sharp, unreadable, but not indifferent. "What do you want?" he asked, voice low. I tilted my head, smiling. "Oh, nothing much, just wondering why you didn't write true like everyone else." His jaw clenched slightly. "Because it's false. That's all." I grinned. "Ooh, so you admit it, you don't hate me." He let out a sharp exhale, clearly regretting even engaging in this conversation. Move. But I didn't. Instead, I took a step closer. Close enough that our shoes nearly touched. Close enough that I could see the way his breath hitched ever so slightly. "If you don't hate me," I whispered, my fingers lightly trailing along his sleeve, "then what do you feel about me, darling?" His hands, which had been so steady, suddenly gripped the strap of his bag too tight. The air shifted, charged, electric. I could hear the faint sound of students in the distance, but it all felt far away. Right now, it was just him and me. He didn't answer, didn't move, didn't even blink. Just stared at me like I was something dangerous. Something that made him nervous. And I loved it. I leaned in even closer, lowering my voice. "You can tell me, you know. I won't tease." His jaw tightened. "Liar." I laughed softly. "Okay, fine, I might tease just a little." My fingers brushed against his wrist. "But you like it, don't you?" That did it. William suddenly grabbed my wrist, his grip firm, too firm, and pulled me even closer. "Easter." His voice was quiet, dangerous. I could feel the tension humming between us, crackling like a storm waiting to break. His hand was warm against my skin, his gaze dark and unreadable, his face just inches from mine. And yet, he didn't push me away. Didn't move back. Didn't let go. I swallowed, my heart pounding, but I refused to break eye contact. If he thought I'd be intimidated, he clearly forgot who he was dealing with. I hummed, my lips twitching up. "Yes, darling." His grip tightened for a second. Then, he let go, stepping back so fast it was almost abrupt, his expression locking back into something cold and controlled. "Go home, Easter." His voice was back to normal, steady and emotionless. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, my wrist still tingling, my heart still racing, and a grin spreading across my lips. "Oh, William, if you think I'm letting this go, you don't know me at all." I kicked a pebble along the pavement, hands stuffed into my pockets as I strolled aimlessly. The sky was painted with soft oranges and purples, the evening breeze ruffling my hair. My mind, however, was stuck somewhere else. William, that cold, emotionless act he put on, he thought I didn't notice, didn't remember. But I did. I always did. William had always been like this. Pretending not to care, acting all tough, but in reality, he knew everything about me. My likes, my dislikes. What made me pout, what made me laugh, what made me angry enough to stomp my foot like a child. I still remember when we were kids. I was always a spoiled brat, throwing tantrums over the smallest things. And William, he was the one fixing my problems, even when he pretended he didn't want to. Like the time when I fell off my bike and scraped my knee. I had cried like the world was ending. The other kids just stared, some even laughed, but William. He sighed, walked over, and pulled out a band-aid from his pocket. "Stop crying. It's just a scratch. It hurts." I had sniffled, dramatically wiping my tears on my sleeve. He didn't roll his eyes or call me annoying, not this time. Instead, he crouched down and carefully pressed the band-aid over my scraped knee, his fingers lingering for a second too long. "There. Now stop whining." But he didn't move away immediately. His thumb brushed over the edge of the band-aid, like he was making sure it was secure. Like he cared. And that wasn't the only time. When I lost my favorite jacket at the arcade, I threw a fit, accusing everyone of stealing it. William, he silently disappeared for 10 minutes and came back, tossing the jacket at my face with a muttered, "Idiot. You left it in the photo booth." When I forgot my lunch in middle school, he always somehow had extra food. He never handed it to me directly, though. He'd just push his tray closer, looking anywhere but at me, and say, "I'm not hungry. Eat." When I stayed out late past curfew and got caught in the rain, he was the one standing at the school gate with an umbrella, waiting for me like a pissed-off mother. "You're soaking wet, dumbass." But his hands were warm when he handed me his jacket. Even now, in high school, when we argued and bickered and I called him my darling just to annoy him, he still looked out for me. Always. When I forgot my notes, he slid his into my bag when I wasn't looking. When I fell asleep in class, he nudged me awake right before the teacher caught me. When I complained about my hands being cold, he tossed me his gloves without a word. William acted cold, but his actions screamed something else. Something louder. Something warmer. William knew me better than anyone. And no matter how much he denied it, he cared. He always cared. He sees nothing else if I am standing before his eyes. Maybe this all is what helped me realize my feelings better for him. Just when can I make him mine? Morning sunlight bathed the schoolyard as I scanned the crowd, searching for my darling. Where was he? Usually, I spotted his brooding presence easily, his dark eyes, his too calm posture, his, "I don't care about you but I actually do," aura. But today, no sign of William. I huffed, crossing my arms. TCH, how dare he hide from me? I was about to storm off when, bam, I walked straight into someone. And not just anyone. Pink hair, slightly taller than me, delicate features that could rival mine, yet there was something effortlessly cool about him, like a breeze in spring. He gave me a lazy grin, eyes twinkling with mischief. "Noel Sinclair, you brat," I gasped dramatically before breaking into a grin. "Easter Wilson, still as dramatic as ever," he chuckled, ruffling my hair. "Didn't know I'd run into you this soon." I pouted. "What do you mean? I am fate's favorite child. Of course, I'd be the first person to welcome you." Noel was my older brother Easton's boyfriend. No one knew about them except me, and obviously, that meant I had claimed Noel as my official brother-in-law. I was very close to him, clingy, if you asked anyone else, but that was their problem, not mine. I hooked my arm around his. "Why didn't you tell me you were transferring here? I would have thrown a grand welcome party with banners that said, 'Welcome, my favorite brother-in-law.'" "Because I knew you'd do exactly that," he said, smirking. "And my goal is to survive this school, not make a grand entrance." PFF'd. Lame. I rolled my eyes but grinned. "Come on, let's go to class together. You're sitting next to me." Noel and I walked into class together, laughing and whispering about things totally important, like whether Easton had finally confessed to being soft for Noel. He hadn't, the coward. We sat together, chatting away as I stole his notes, poked his cheek, and listened to his advice on how to get my grumpy darling's attention. What I didn't notice, however, was the cold, burning stare drilling into me from across the room. William, oh, he was watching. And he did not like what he was seeing. The moment he entered the classroom, his already stoic face turned frigid. People could feel the temperature drop, and soon enough, whispers started spreading. Did Easter finally lose interest in William? I mean, he's been glued to that new guy all morning. They even sit together. Easter hasn't even looked at William today. Oh damn, William looks mad, no, cold. That was the word. The entire class could feel the silent storm brewing behind his dark eyes as he sat in his usual spot, arms crossed, his glare as sharp as a knife. It wasn't obvious anger, it was calm, too calm. But his cold fire was scorching enough to send chills down people's spines. And me, oblivious as ever, happily chatting with Noel, planning my next move to get William's attention. If only I knew I already had it. It didn't take long. Oh, it really didn't. One moment, I was happily roaming the halls with my dear brother Noel, chatting about the absolute disaster that was Easton's love life. The next moment, bam, I was shoved into a corner, my back hitting the cold wall as a strong arm caged me in. Oh my. William stood inches away from me, his piercing dark eyes locking onto mine. His face was unreadable, his jaw tight, but his entire presence screamed something dangerous. Oh, this was hot. This was so hot, my stomach did a little flip. His hand pressed against the wall beside my head, his broad frame casting a shadow over me. Oh God, was he finally jealous? Did our plan actually work? I grinned, tilting my head as I batted my lashes. Darling, what happened? You need help. Silence. His eyes didn't waver, but there was something about the way he looked at me. The intensity, the quiet burn. Scary, but not in a bad way. No, this was the kind of scary that made my heart race for all the wrong, right reasons. His free hand lifted, fingers grazing the hem of my collar. My breath hitched. Who is he? His voice was low, calm, too calm. Oh, I smirked. Who? Noel. He's my. You were all over him. William cut me off, his voice laced with something I couldn't quite place. He tilted his head slightly, his gaze unwavering. Didn't even look at me once today. Oh, darling. I bit my lip, barely holding back my excitement. He was jealous. This was everything I wanted. I leaned in slightly, my voice dropping to a playful whisper. Ah, were you watching me, darling? Did you miss me? His hand suddenly grabbed my chin, tilting my face up. My breath caught in my throat. His fingers weren't rough, no, they were careful, as if he knew exactly how much pressure to use. Don't test me, Easter, he murmured, his voice sending a shiver down my spine. Oh, he was serious. The usual bickering, the playful banter, this was different. He wasn't looking at me with the usual you're so annoying expression. No, this was something else. Something deeper, possessive. My lips curled into a slow smirk. What if I want to test you? William's grip tightened just slightly, his thumb brushing against my jaw. His eyes flickered, like he was holding something back. For a split second, I wondered if he'd finally snap, finally do something. And then, just as fast as it happened, he let go. He stepped back, shoving his hands into his pockets, his expression returning to its usual icy calm. Stay out of trouble, and with that, he began to walk away. Don't walk away already. I reached out, grabbing his wrist before he could disappear again. With one firm tug, I pulled him back toward me, wrapping my arms around his neck to keep him close. Damn it, why is he so tall? I had to pull him down just to meet his gaze properly. Still, I smiled, all innocent and sweet, but my eyes, I knew he could see it. The way they softened just for him. The way they screamed, I love you. Don't be mad, darling. I'm not cheating. I'm still in love with you just like before. No, actually, even more now. You're so adorable. My voice dropped into a whisper, teasing yet reassuring. And don't worry about Brother Noel. He's my brother's boyfriend. It's a secret, so don't tell anyone. For the first time, William's cold mask cracked. His eyes widened for a fraction of a second before they narrowed again, but I saw it. He didn't even try to hide the relief washing over him. Yeah, well, whatever. I don't care. Let me go. He tried to step back, but I was faster. I grabbed his arms and firmly placed them around my waist, tightening my hold around his neck so he couldn't escape. His breath hitched, his hands tensing slightly against my sides. Darling, I murmured, looking up at him, I know you care. I know how jealous you were, seeing me with someone else. My voice turned softer, more vulnerable. I know you're definitely in love with me, so why do you keep rejecting me? I'm really tired now, it's been half a year. I really want to be yours. My throat felt tight, my heart pounding painfully in my chest as I stared into his unreadable eyes. He wasn't pushing me away, but he wasn't pulling me closer either. William was caught off guard, his lips parting slightly as if he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. I know you love me, I continued, my voice trembling just a little. You know you love me even more, so why say no? I tiptoed, leaning closer, our breaths mingling. My gaze slowly dropped to his lips. And then, a mischievous idea popped into my head. I smirked. I'm about to kiss you, I whispered playfully. Kiss me back if you hate me. I giggled before pressing my lips against his. He didn't move. His lips remained still against mine, his body tense. Of course he wouldn't kiss back just because I said that. But, I pulled back, giggling again. Now, kiss me back if you don't want me to leave you. I barely finished my sentence before his grip on my waist tightened suddenly. His lips crashed against mine, rough and desperate, stealing the breath from my lungs. A surprised gasp escaped me, but he didn't give me time to react. His lips moved fiercely, thoroughly claiming mine, his hand sliding up the back of my head before pinning me completely against the wall. My fingers clutched onto his shirt as his mouth devoured mine. His body pressed against me, his warmth seeping into my skin as our lips clashed again and again, teeth grazing, tongues tangling, raw and hungry. The rush of emotions, the electric feeling in my veins, was overwhelming. I lost myself in it. In him. I didn't know how long we kissed, but by the time we broke apart, I was breathless. My chest heaved as I gasped for air, my arms still loosely wrapped around his neck. William didn't move away completely. He pressed his forehead against my shoulder, his warm breath ghosting over my skin as he tried to catch his own breath. "See," I smiled, patting his back lightly. "You can't resist, can you?" My voice was teasing, but there was an ache in my chest. "You can't stand the thought of me leaving your side. So why keep saying no to me? Why keep pushing me away?" Silence. Then, suddenly, he pulled away. The warmth that surrounded me was gone in an instant, replaced by the cold emptiness of the air between us. I blinked up at him, my heart sinking at the expression on his face. Dark, conflicted, almost afraid. I can't, not yet." And before I could say anything, he bolted, vanished down the hall, leaving me standing there, breathless, lips tingling, and utterly annoyed. What the hell? He still didn't agree. I stormed into the house, slamming the door behind me. My frustration boiled over, and before I could think twice, I kicked the nearest vase off the table. It shattered on the floor, sending pieces scattering. Damn it, why is he so stubborn? Why can't he just admit he loves me? I didn't care. I kicked another vase, watching it shatter just like the first. My temper was a wild beast, and today, I couldn't keep it in check. I let it all out. "Easter, what happened?" It was Brother Noel's voice, calm as always, but I barely registered his presence. I kept on whining, my anger mixing with something else. The tears came out before I even realized they were there. They just fell, like a sudden storm. I collapsed onto the couch, my legs tangled in a mess of pillows and blankets, sniffling into the soft fabric. It wasn't until I heard the familiar shuffle of papers that I even noticed Easton, my older brother, sitting on the couch opposite mine. His sharp features and glasses were the only things that caught my attention. He was focused on something in his hands, probably a file, until finally, he looked up at me with his usual unbothered expression. "What happened?" he asked, his voice devoid of emotion, as if this wasn't the first time he'd seen me act this way. I sniffled, wiping my nose and still trying to catch my breath. "I'm in love, but the love, it's always rejecting me." I buried my face into Noel's shoulder, desperate for some comfort. Noel, ever the patient one, patted my back gently, his hands moving in slow circles to calm me. But Easton was quiet, analyzing me as always. "Who?" "William." Easton's calm voice broke through the noise in my head, and I froze, looking up at him. I sniffed, a little surprised. "How did you know?" I asked, my voice cracking slightly. Easton adjusted his glasses with a deliberate motion, his eyes never leaving mine. "Of course. I know. Everyone knows. He's been in love with you since childhood." My heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. "What?" I whispered, not sure if I had heard him right. "Yeah," Easton continued, unfazed, "but I never confronted him about it until I found out you're also in love with him, but you're spoiled. My fault for spoiling you too much. You've always gotten what you want, especially from him. You didn't focus on your studies, except for math. So, I told William to reject you, to use that love of yours to make you focus and be a better student. And guess what? It worked. At least, he got your attention, and you started focusing on your studies. You passed the exams." The silence in the room was suffocating. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My head felt heavy as I processed the words Easton had just dropped. I was speechless. So was Noel, who was staring at me in shock. So that's why William keeps making me do things like focus on study, do homework and attend classes. I thought he was doing it so that I get fed up of him because I hate doing those. Wow, wait, you did what? I asked, my voice rising in disbelief. That's why he keeps rejecting me. Why didn't you ever tell me this? Easton fixed his glasses again, looking at me with that detached, cool expression. You never asked, he said simply, as if it was the most logical thing in the world. And at first, it wasn't the right time. But now, since you're about to graduate, I thought it would be better to tell you. Since you brought it up, here we are. Now, stop crying. Go inside, the ice cream's in the fridge. Have some, but not too much, it's cold. Get some sleep, and go see him tomorrow. I stared at him, still too stunned to process everything he said. I didn't even know what to say back. My emotions felt like a storm swirling inside of me, a mix of anger, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite place. Go ahead, Easter, Noel spoke softly, nudging me gently. You'll feel better tomorrow. But all I could do was stare at Easton, my mind a blur. How could he have known all this and kept it from me? Why didn't he warn me sooner? I don't know what to think anymore. The cafeteria was buzzing with chatter and laughter, but none of that mattered to me now. All that mattered was the truth. The truth I had discovered, the truth that had been hidden from me for so long. I spotted William sitting by himself, his usual cold, detached demeanor not helping to cool the fire that was burning inside me. Everyone else was minding their own business, unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. I didn't care. I stormed over to him, the anger practically radiating off me as I marched straight through the crowd. I stood right in front of his table, the tension palpable, the world slowing around me as I glared at him. William, I shouted, my voice cutting through the noise of the cafeteria like a knife. How dare you? His eyes widened slightly, and I saw the tension in his shoulders. Good, I thought, at least he knew I was serious. You found out. His voice trembled, betraying his cool facade. He sounded almost guilty, maybe even scared. Of course I did, I snapped, taking a step closer. I wasn't backing down now. I know everything, William. You were rejecting me on purpose all this time, weren't you? For brother's words and for what? To get me to focus on my studies. To make me a better student. I could feel the heat of everyone's gaze on us now. Whispers spread like wildfire through the cafeteria. People were starting to notice, their heads turning toward us as the scene unfolded. Without thinking, I lunged forward. I wasn't letting him run away this time. I jumped on him, my hands grabbing his collar as I pulled him toward me, determined to make him face the truth head-on. He didn't have time to react. We both lost our balance and fell to the ground, but William quickly adjusted his position, making sure I didn't hit the ground too hard. His strong arms held me close, even in this chaotic moment. I ignored the stares of the students around us, the whispers and gasps. All I cared about was him. I grabbed his collar tighter, forcing him to meet my gaze. Why didn't you just tell me? My voice cracked with frustration, but I didn't care. Why did you make me go through all this if you were in love with me too? His breath hitched, and for a moment, his eyes were searching mine, like he was unsure of what to say. His usual cold expression faltered, and something inside me stirred. You think I don't know how much you care about me? I continued, my tone softening despite the anger still simmering beneath the surface. You think I didn't notice? I feel it, William. I always have. The world around us seemed to disappear. It was just us now, tangled on the floor, with the truth hanging in the air between us. His hands trembled as he touched my face, the coolness of his fingers brushing my skin like a whisper of the storm inside him. The silence stretched for a few moments, heavy with unsaid words and feelings that had been locked away for too long. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Well, I can't just say no to your brother's orders. Also, I didn't wanted the chance of making you focus on studies. Also, I enjoyed having you chase after me. I didn't need him to say more. The words I'd been waiting for, the ones that had been lingering in my chest for so long, finally came rushing out. You love me, don't you? He hesitated before nodding, his eyes flickering with a vulnerability I had never seen before. Of course, I love you, he said, his voice hoarse but certain. I always have and always will. My heart raced as the confession finally left his lips. But even as the relief washed over me, there was something bittersweet in it. All this time, I had known. I always knew. But now, with the truth out in the open, the weight of it all was finally starting to sink in. I couldn't help but feel my heart flutter as I pouted at him, still sitting comfortably on his lap. You're annoying, just wait now, I'll make sure to have you run after me as your punishment, I teased, my voice full of playfulness and a little mischief. But then, before I could say anything else, his fingers gently cupped my chin, lifting it so he could look at me properly. His gaze was softer than I had ever seen, and I could feel his warmth radiating through me. Then, he smiled, that slight curl of his lips sending a shiver down my spine. I wouldn't mind, he said, his voice low and steady, his breath brushing against my skin as he kissed my forehead tenderly. I froze for a moment, my heart racing. His words hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for, because for the first time, it wasn't just a playful response. It was an acceptance, a confirmation that he wasn't running away anymore. I leaned into him, my face slightly flushed. "You always know how to make my heart race," I muttered, my hands gently brushing against his chest. He chuckled softly, still holding me close, his fingers playing with the ends of my hair. "I think you do that all on your own, my Easter." The way he said my name made me feel like the world was a little more mine, and I couldn't help but smile despite myself.